the price is going to vary dynamically or randomly. If I consider financial organization, it has its own data. Military will have their own employees as well as their own personal data. All the e-commerce websites are responsible for generating massive amount of data. Hello to all, a warm welcome to my new session on digital fluency, and the topic is applications of big data. I'm Revati from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Anyway, dear student, in my today's session, at the beginning, I'm going to deal with applications of big data. That means which are the fields we can able to make use of big data. But before going to start my today's session, let me to recall the topic which I have covered in my last session. So dear student, in my last session, I started with applications of database management system. That means where we can able to find the use of database management system. That is nothing but education sector, social media, then railway, reservation center, airlines. Along with that, we can able to find out online shopping center. So these are the some of the applications of database management system. But in my today's session, I'm going to deal with the applications of big data. Before that, tell me what is big data here? What is big data? The size of the data is massive and it is measured in terms of petabyte or zottabyte or yottabyte. So that is nothing but the size of the data is 10 to the power 15. And all the data are in the form of structured, unstructured as well as semi-structured data. Now, let's see the application of big data. First, we are going to have the applications of big data in the healthcare, along with that in the manufacturing, along with that media and entertainment, as well as applications in IoT. Along with that, most of the government agencies, they're going to use big data. So these are the some of the field we can able to use big data. That means these fields are responsible for generating massive amount of data. For that reason, to store all kind of data, we are going to use big data, and from the examination point of view, this is very, very important topic. Now, at the beginning, I'm going to have healthcare. Suppose if I consider any healthcare centers, they are going to have massive amount of patient details. To store all the details which is regarding to client diagnosis and client history, all the data are stored in the big data. Because if I consider healthcare, it's going to generate different varieties of data. To store different varieties of data, we can able to use big data. So here, big data has started making a massive difference in the healthcare sectors, and it helps to predicate you analytics medical professionals as well as healthcare professionals, and it can produce personalized healthcare as well as solo patient also. That means by using big data, we can able to produce personalized healthcare as well as solo. Solo means what? Single patient information. Now, if I consider the second application, that is travel and tourism. Now, the travel as well as tourism sectors are so retake. Here, travel and tourism sectors also going to make use of big data. It enables us to forecast travel facility requirements at multiple locations and improve business through dynamic pricing and many more. So here, if I consider big data as well as if I go with the travel and tourism sectors, they are going to produce huge amount of data, that is in terms of multiple locations or improving business through dynamic pricing. So what is this dynamic pricing? That means the price is going to vary dynamically or randomly, and to manage the price, once again we are going to use big data. And if I consider financial as well as banking sectors, we are going to use big data. If I consider banking sectors, we have billions of clients, and to manage all the transaction or client details or customer details, we require big data. Even if I consider financial organization, it has its own data. That means it must have its own data. To manage their data in proper way, they required big data. So here the financial as well as banking sectors uses big data technology extensively. So here big data analytics helps banks and customer behavior on the basis of investment patterns. That means to identify the investors pattern, once again we are going to use big data. Even most of the shopping trends, motivation to invest, and input that are obtained from personal or financial background. So these are the some of the applications of big data. Now, if I consider telecommunication and media, in telecommunication and multimedia sectors are the main users of big data. So here big data is responsible for identifying the call switching or user call, that is user log information, as well as if I consider multimedia, we have plenty of videos, we have plenty of audios. To search those audios or videos, to identify user request, all those things we require big data. So here if I consider telecommunication and multimedia, it is responsible for generating massive amount of data as well as different variety of data. So there are zettabytes to be generated every day, and handling large scale of data, we required big data technology. If I consider Netflix or Z5, They are going to generate massive amount of data, and to manage the data, we are going to use big data. And if I consider government as well as military, see here, government as well as military also uses technologies at the higher rate. And if I go with the government, and if I consider Aadhaar card, and if I consider the population, and each person will have their own Aadhaar details. Just imagine the size of the data. And if I consider military will have their own employees as well as their own personal data. Now, to manage government data as well as military data, we required some technology. That is nothing but big data. That means to manage all their resources, they're going to use big data. And here, government agencies uses big data and runs many agencies managing utilities, dealing with traffic jams as well as the effect of criminal like hacking and online fraud. And here I have the example Aadhaar card. Now the government has a record of 1.21 billion citizens. This vast data is analyzed and stored to find things like number of youths in the country. So here, to manage vast amount of data, we are going to use big data. And if I go with e-commerce, all the e-commerce websites are responsible for generating massive amount of data. If I consider Amazon, Flipkart, or eBay, they have their own product details, price details, transaction details as well as customer details. Now, to manage all these things, once again, we are going to use big data analytics. So, dear student, here, most of the e-commerce website, they're going to use big data. It's mainly used to maintain the relationship with the customer. Now, here, e-commerce website have many marketing ideas to retail or manage the transaction as well as implement better strategic of innovative ideas to improve business with the big data. And if I consider Amazon, so Amazon is a tremendous e-commerce website, deals with lot of traffic daily, and to handle the traffic effectively as well as data effectively, most of the online websites are going to use big data. Now, the next application here is social media. So, what is this social media? I can able to consider Facebook, Twitter, or WhatsApp. Even I can able to consider Telegram. Okay, all those things are going to generate massive amount of data in terms of post, or in terms of videos, or in terms of audios, or in terms of chat. Now, social media is the largest data generator. That means the source which is going to generate massive amount of data is here social media. The statistics have shown around 500 plus terabytes of fresh data generated from social media daily, particularly on Facebook. That means if I consider only Facebook, social media, it is responsible for generating 500 plus 10 to the power 15. That is 50 plus terabytes of data every day. Now, the data mainly includes videos, photos, message exchange, or any post, etc. So, a single activity on the social media website generates many stored data and gets processed when required. And the data stored in the terabyte, that means whatever the data the social media is going to generate, that is measured in terms of terabytes and stored in terms of terabytes. And to store these amount of data, it requires time as well as it takes time for processing. So these are the some of the applications of big data. So dear student, in my today's session, I started with the applications of big data. Anyway, dear student, let's meet in the next session with the new concept, that is applications of Internet of Things. Until that, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.